Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Signing day. We need, a kazoo or a party favor sound effect or something. Well, Nebraska did all their work in the first session. A couple that you may view as that got away, or a couple of scholarships stashed for the portal post spring football. We'll get into it. Recruiting insider Greg Smith from Hail Varsity going to be with us in 1 hour. We will talk plenty of Super Bowl and all things Nebraska. Lars Anderson will join us. He's co-host of the Jay Barker Show. He also has done a phenomenal job in his career being able to sit down and do long-form connections, stories, and one of those connections turned into a book called The Quarterback Whisperer with, you guessed it, Bruce Arians, head coach of Tampa. So we'll spend some time with Nebraska native Lars Anderson in the second hour. Excited to spend some time on golf with Mike Schuhart, Wilderness Ridge, and, of course, Mike Babcock, historian, author, Hall of Famer. Babbers, we'll talk some football, and we might dive into a little Husker baseball with Babbers in about 20 minutes. You can join us. You know the number at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Email chris@hailvarsity.com. Follow us, find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah. So, show of hands, not while you're driving, who thought Avante Dickerson was headed to Lincoln? When I heard that he went to Oregon on his own dime, when he traveled to Minneapolis on his own dime, I thought, I don't know. And a really good write-up, really good story from Mitch Sherman, our friend from The Athletic. We had Mitch on Tuesday, and some pretty telling insight here with the folks at Westside. And listen, Avante Dickerson in his conversation with Mitch Sherman said, loves Scott Frost, loves a lot of his teammates and guys he's worked with and trained with from Omaha that are part of this 2021 class. But when push came to shove, Avante Dickerson wanted something different. And he is wowed by Oregon and really had no connection when he went on his own dime for that visit with staff, didn't collaborate with staff or step foot in any of the facilities. He just kind of took a tour of the city and got to hang out with some of the fellas at Oregon. So Oregon's got a lot coming back in the secondary that are pretty proven, and Oregon's team last year was really pretty good. And this whole COVID thing's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare for guys like Avante Dickerson. It's been a nightmare for kids that did not get to go on their tour. And it's been it's a leap of faith anyway, if you're at that level to get recruited. And then you got to pare it down. But, oh, by the way, you can't go visit. You can do things virtually, but it isn't the same. So it was a pretty good story from Mitch about how Avante and his mom would save money so they could afford to at least go check things out. So the reality is this, though. Avante Dickerson's a top 8 corner in the country. Avante Dickerson's a top 125 player, a composite ranking in the country, and he is not going to Lincoln, and that's his prerogative. So let's spend a few minutes here on what Nebraska has done. What Nebraska has done since Scott Frost has come to Lincoln. I'd say his closing ratio is pretty good. 13 out of 17 in-state kids have committed to Nebraska. Nebraska did a really nice job with this recruiting class as they come in per Rivals number 19. They come in with 24/7 composite. That's 24/7 sports. That's Rivals. That's ESPN in at number 20. And that is incredible. That is flat out incredible to come in again with another top 20, top 25 class, upper tier, top 4, top 5 in the Big Ten. And we told you how screwy COVID is. You know it. You've lived it, right? Just with your normal life. Some of you do have kids that have tried to figure out what they want to do for college academically or athletically. And you've had to adjust and adapt. For Nebraska, without official visits, with minimal contact except for technology, for Nebraska to nail a number 19 or number 20 recruiting class, for them to be able to get a Thomas Fedoni, for them to be able to get a Huhuli, for them to be able to get a number of kids is flat out it's several feathers in their cap, okay? I can't put into words just how impressive that is. Now, what you all need to see as Nebraska fans is the translation part. Nebraska is getting top 20, top 25 talent. Is it up for debate how accurate some of the ratings are? Well, statistically, if a kid's big, strong, and fast and goes to some camps and shows out against like competition, that's a fair assessment. Now, are pads on all the time? No. Is a kid going to adjust to the academics and life in Division I football all the time at a high level? No. I mean, it's inexact, clearly. But for Nebraska to land four stars of their 20 commits today, or this 2021 cycle, with Fedoni and Huhuli and Prohaska and Randy Kapai out of South Dakota, that's work, man. That is work by Held. That's work by Fisher. That's work by Austin. That's work by Rude. That's work by, who am I missing? Lubick, Frost, Duvall, the crew. Awesome. Now it needs to translate into wins. And Nebraska is in a rare situation, and it's in a situation similar to 30, 32 years ago, where you had incredible regional/metro talent in this region, in Omaha, in Lincoln, in central Nebraska, out in western Nebraska. Go pick, right? Go back and look at the kids that won the first national championship for Coach Osborne, and look at how many of them were Nebraskans, either small town scholarship or walk-on kids, or kids from Lincoln Southeast, or kids from Omaha Benson, or just go through the list. The Tony Velans, the John Hesses, the Zadiskas, okay, the Phil Ellises, the Eric Stokes. I mean, they were great, really talented guys, and they got developed up to be championship level. And they won one, and some of them won a couple. So Nebraska has that generational talent back within the state border, and 13 out of 17 ain't bad. We'll talk to Greg Smith here. Honestly, what there's more talent out there, right? The 2022 class is pretty high level. Is Nebraska going to be able to land that? Don't know, honestly, because you've got a different Nebraska. Because Nebraska right now is a 5-7 football team, a 4-8 football team. That's the other component of this, Elijah, and you're not far removed from it, with some teammates that ended up making tough choices to stay or leave Nebraska for a Division I scholarship in the Big Ten specifically. Nebraska is not the same Nebraska as they're trying to get back to that level of awe and, man, I want to go play there. For some kids, it's still that way. But it's not that way for a number of kids because Nebraska's not been dominant, relevant, or nationally effective the last 10 years, right? Why is it so cool that Sue and Levante David are in the Super Bowl? Because they were both on really the last really decent teams in Nebraska football. We're working on a decade. Kids that are 17, 18 years of age making their decision today with the second signing day they were 8 years old watching Sioux in 2009, maybe 7 or 8 years old or 9 or 10 years of age watching Levante David kill it in the Big 10 or Big 12 for that final season. So people know Frost, people know Nebraska, and people know Nebraska need to do better on Saturdays. But they're bringing the talent in. They have the last 4 signing classes. They need to retain some of that talent. But the 500-mile radius that we've talked about for a decade, there was more 500-mile radius signees. Of the 20 signees, 9 from the region, 5 from Nebraska, 2 from Iowa, 1 from South Dakota. That's going to work, and maybe Nebraska will drill down on that in future classes because you've had an ability to do well kind of in that Kansas City region. And, talking with Kaz yesterday, think about the Davis twins, think about Malik Collins, right? You've had some kids from the Kansas City, Missouri Blue Springs region where Kansas City or Kansas/Missouri have been pretty good to you. We'll see if Nebraska revisits that. But Great Hall, not do it on Saturdays, and they have talent and depth to be able to do it with getting kids that are, by all intents and purposes, with the scouts and rivals folks going, okay, these guys can do something well. They can give you a couple, 3 years. Maybe some will be on conference, maybe some beyond. You got to get them here. You got to keep them here, and you got to win with them on Saturday. Nebraska needs better results in part of this process. But the first step is getting them here. They're doing that. Yeah, and when you look at if you go look at how 24/7 has ranked the top 10 players in the Husker class, you have 7 of those guys coming from the 500-mile radius. Mm-hmm. You got Fedoni, you got Prohashka, you got Kapai, Latovsky, James Carney, Heiner Carberg. That's exactly what... A couple from Iowa, too. Yeah, exactly. So what Nebraska fans have been calling for is keep those guys around home close. What I want to see start developing in these recruiting classes, the ability to go down to Florida, the ability to go down to Texas, and the ability to get these high-profile 4- or 5-star guys. Right now, they have a lot of great 3-star players, 4-star players from those states. Could they start getting some higher-end quality once they start locking up the guys around the state of Nebraska and building the program off of those guys? I sure hope so. But I think right now this class is a great start towards the direction that Scott Frost wants to take this program. And the blowback here is, okay, so the one that got away, right? And you've got Betts that ended up coming here, which was good. That was a big get for Nebraska. Watts ended up going to Notre Dame. You've got Dickerson that took off over to Oregon, and I'm leaving out a couple of kids. I mean, I just looking at this class. In this class, the hit percentage of those guys coming here has been higher because you look back to 2017 or 2018, and you had Bryson Williams, my teammate, going off to Wisconsin, and then you had a couple guys last year in Betts. Betts is here, but Watts. Yeah, Watts. And then who's the other one last year? Well, you got Johnson, Klester's son. Yes, to Iowa. Part of this class. Was he this class? I think so. This recruiting class has just been early signee. Because you got December. It feels like we've just been talking about this recruiting class forever. Well, it's 2 sessions, and what do you listen? What do you reserve with scholarships? Because you've got the portal that's a reality. It's been a son of a bee for you if you're Nebraska, but it can be used to your advantage as you look at what you need. Rush end / outside linebacker. That's the other thing, right? With Nebraska, there's a couple of kids in this class that we talked to that, would have been interesting to see them land in Lincoln. And I'm talking about Patrick Payton out of Florida, outside linebacker, Northwest Miami High School, and then Will Schweitzer, kid out of California. Yeah, the Los Gatos, right? And Schweitzer ended up flipping to Notre Dame. And with Peyton, he ended up going closer to home. I think I want to say Florida State. Does that sound right? Sounds right to me. I really liked what I saw from Patrick Payton whenever we watched him on tape. Man, that dude was a beast. Just like a 6'8" monster at the end. And that's it. And I mean, it's kind of the same song, second verse, with what you want and need, and that is Nebraska still needs a pass rusher. And Nebraska still needs to just kind of kick the tires on where they're at quarterback. Where can Smothers develop to be a challenger for the job if Adrian isn't getting it done or if Adrian's injured? And you got Harburg, who, God, he's got size and he's got an arm. Smart, tough Nebraska kid from Kearney. So you're okay with some guys. They just don't have any experience, and that's no fun. But there's no time like the present, right, to try and grind and get better in that quarterback room after the departure. We've spent time on here with McCaffrey. But you do have a couple of scholarships in your back pocket for a portal, for a JUCO, or for a grad transfer. So this is pretty good, and this is part of the conversation, too, is roster management. And what I like Nebraska doing is this walk-on class. All right, the walk-on class that they have put together, we're talking 20 more walk-ons for Nebraska. That's impressive. You've got a slew of kids from Lincoln Southeast that are really good ball players that have played Class A football at a high level. You got some smaller schools kids that are really talented. You got a Buddha in the mix that you got to love from Southwest. And you got Bullock from Prep. I love watching Bullock. That kid can ball, right? You got a bunch of Nebraska kids. You've added 3 or 4 offensive linemen from the walk-on to the offensive lineman you brought in. So it's a good day for Nebraska, officially done for 2021. Mike Babcock's next.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
All right, we'll talk to Lars Anderson in an hour. His take on Bruce Arians. BA. When I think of BA, I think of BA Baracus. This is the other BA who enjoys Crown, golf, and late-night sessions. So stay tuned for Story Time with Lars Anderson and the Bucs head coach, Bruce Arians, his Super Bowl run. We welcome in Mike Babcock from HailVarsity.com and magazine at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, kind of a ho-hum signing day today. Got the official announcement with Hahuli out of Hawaii. And really, I love the walk-on kids that Nebraska's been bringing in. What's it say to you, Babbers, about what Frost and Company did again on the recruiting trail? We all agree it needs to be better on Saturdays for wins. That said, they're getting the talent in here, it looks like, on paper.
Well, yeah, it does. It does. And like you said, and it's always been this way for me, let them get here, let them get on the field, and let's see what they can do. But and 11 of the 20 scholarship kids are early enrollees, so that's a positive as well. Have an opportunity to go through spring practice, whatever that looks like, and get a head start on things. So this is always a time to be optimistic, right? Because players can be the recruits can be as good as you want them to be in your imagination. Until they get on the field, and then you see what you got.
Mike Babcock's with us from Hail Varsity. That's right. Optimism is good. Excited to hear from Coach Frost tomorrow, as he'll have a Zoom session, and that'll be interesting. And Mike, as we kind of gear towards it, the early enrollee part of things, and you hit on it, that's so important, and you hear coaches talk all the time about kids getting acclimated. I want to go to the Avante Dickerson topic for a moment here and just kind of get your reaction, not only with just the close rate by Frost, 13 of 17 in-state kids, but there's been an explosion of really high-level kids in this region, specifically in the state borders, that, they're getting interest from everywhere. It's not often you lose a kid to Notre Dame or Oregon, but the fact of the matter is you've got LSU and Ohio State and Minnesota and Oregon, and go through the list. They're visiting more often the high school campuses.
Yeah, in this age of social media and you got camps all over the place, and now it's that's been impacted obviously by the pandemic, but kids are getting their names out there and much younger, before their senior years, and coaches are seeing them at these camps, and they post video on social media and so forth. It's just more difficult I don't want to say hide, but for guys to get overlooked.
You can say hide. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean it's and it's tougher for Nebraska, obviously, and getting and losing what 3? Did you say?
Well, if you think about it, I mean you've got Watts to Notre Dame. You got Avante Dickerson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who's the third? Did we come up with one? 13-17. It's all right, not important, but the point is 13 out of 17. The number is 17. 17 Division I kids, right? Through 4 years is a good number.
Yeah, no, that's good. You'd like to get them all.
Mm-hmm.
You'd like to keep them at home because again, you're dealing with something that's been going on for a while, and that is that you move to the Big Ten, and there's a different recruiting footprint there,
mm-hmm.
and you're not getting guys from areas that maybe you once did. And, it's more difficult when you don't have – Nebraska hasn't had particularly stable coaching situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's difficult. And you've got to get some solid contacts in these areas. And so the place to start, obviously, is at home in the state, and that's why you'd like to get them all if you could. But, there's always been one or two that have kind of gotten away, even under Osborne, that it seemed like there were some guys from Omaha Central that always seemed to go somewhere else. At Creighton Prep, that was another school that maybe Nebraska didn't always get them, but for the most part, Tom Osborne got the guys in the state that he wanted, and that was the key. That was the basis for your recruiting classes, I think, and then you pepper in guys from distance, New Jersey. Nebraska had a really good run of guys from New Jersey. You got some guys from Florida because Nebraska was consistently in the Orange Bowl and got exposure down there. And the kinds of exposure that Nebraska got by being on TV when the NCAA limited your number of TV appearances, Nebraska always had the maximum, always got that kind of exposure. And now all schools are getting that kind of exposure, television exposure, and again with the camps and so forth. And Nebraska is not going to the Orange Bowl every year, is not going to major bowls, and that always helped in recruiting as well.
Babbers, I'm to the point where I'd take Shreveport or Detroit in December.
Yeah.
Just get me to a bowl game.
You want to get back in that mentality that it's an assumption that you're in a bowl game, and then it just becomes a question of which one. But
mm-hmm.
It's right now there's a certain degree of fan frustration, about that, and as we've talked, Smitty, I just don't know. So 6-6 in a bowl game, is that going to make people happy? Probably not.
Well, I'll say this: you've been going 4-8 and 5-7, right? And that, and folks are PO'd about that, and I get it. And it's not that they're losing; it's how they're losing, right? Where you got penalties, or you have a chance to win, or you're close to Iowa, or I know you didn't get Wisconsin this year, but you're right there with Northwestern. And you just kind of look at the recruiting rankings, and Northwestern chimes in at 53. Indiana comes in at 61. Iowa's in at 24 or 27. Wisconsin had kind of a bump in their recruiting this year. But you're losing to teams, technically you're out recruiting. You've survived Illinois, and then you've lost to Illinois. They finished 72nd in recruiting. So technically you have better talent than who you're losing to, so that's a source of frustration. Still got to go play Saturday, so it's got to be better and more buttoned up 1 through 4 quarters, and that to me, with the schedule next year, if you get to 6-6 in a bowl game and you knock off somebody, 6-6, that you got to the finish line, great, but if you truly drill down and get better at what you're doing, and that's the execution, and that's the management, that's the identity, okay? And you take a leap offensively, and you take another leap defensively, you can crank out 7 wins. You just can, because technically you have better talent. It comes down to that translation of talent for me, and it's time for. And I know these guys are good coaches. They just got to kind of focus and and get it done because they've been stockpiling talent, Mike, for years.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you know, as we've also talked, you got to have some patience. But
yes,
and you know, I think 6-6 in a bowl game, I think that shows progress. All I'm saying is the fan passion is such that they might look at that and say, okay, 6-6 or 7-5. It's like in a bowl game. It's like, okay, well now, what's the next step? Okay, well now we're back. So let's
get back to 9.
Yeah,
get back to 8 or 9.
So now all of a sudden the standard has changed. It's back to let's win at least 9 games, get in the Big Ten championship game, and be in the national rankings in the top 10. And you know it probably isn't going to happen that fast. But it's a step-by-step process. And you know, I don't know that people have really accepted where things had fallen to.
I don't think we knew. I mean, right? I mean, you hear all sorts of things, and you saw in the field, right? You saw 4-8s and 4-8s and 5-7s, and I mean that was reality kind of slapping you in the face with just where the fall had gone. And it's an accumulation of hitting reset for 20 years.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, even with both, it was always at least 9 wins in a bowl game, and still, it wasn't like, you know, the losses were really tended to be embarrassing, and you know, there were other things going on there, and so, you know, you even have to include those things, I think, in the situation, and like you said, it's been 20 plus years since Nebraska has been consistently in the national conversation, had the national respect that Husker fans have come to expect.
Babber's going to switch gears, and I got about 2.5 minutes. Give me a thought on the Super Bowl Sunday here, what you're interested in, and your excitement level for it.
Well, I'm a little bit torn because I'm a Chiefs fan in this context for this bowl game or this Super Bowl, and by the same token, you know, when you've got 3 Huskers on the other team, you know, you'd like to see them do well, and you know, I think particularly Avante David, because I don't think he's ever gotten the respect that he has earned. And so you know, from that standpoint, I guess it'll be one of those things where maybe I'm not so much cheering for one side or the other. I'm just looking for a really competitive, exciting game. And I think that we've got the potential for that. I know everybody wants to talk about Brady versus Mahomes, but you know, it's so much more than the quarterbacks. I mean, they depend on their success depends not only on what they can do in such a special way, but it also depends on the guys up front, that offensive line. It depends on the guys that are running the ball. It depends on the defense. You know, football really is played by offense, defense, and special teams, and you have to remember that when the announcers are going to be constantly talking about it's Mahomes against Brady.
I think you're right on, and I'm just wondering how the health of Kansas City's O-line, and they've played great with some guys, how they'll be able to handle Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul and Sue and Levante and White, and maybe they'll get after him and be better than they were earlier in the regular season. Mike Babcock's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, you have a great Sunday and rest of your week, obviously, and it's fun to chat with you. Thanks for the time, as always.
You and your listeners, be safe, Smitty.
You too. All right, Mike, good to be with you. All right, appreciate Mike Babcock. We'll head over to Wilderness Ridge. Mike Schuhart's building a snowman with a putter. We'll find out more next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Mike Babcock. We'll hit Lars Anderson and Super Bowl thoughts with Bruce Arians, 525. Coming up next hour, and we say hi to Mike Schuhart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey, you building a snowman, and has that snowman got a putter in his hand?
Yeah, he does. Putter, driver, set of clubs. Just waiting for this stuff to go away. It sounds like more's coming. Not good.
I know. So if we got to get into this Patrick Reed, Xander Schauffele situation and lay it out for me. What's your reaction to Sunday at the Farmers, or the reaction from the golf community versus Patrick Reed? Is it just the fact Reed's not super likable that this is being blown up, or are you calling BS on this?
It's a combination. I mean, one is he's not the most likable guy out there. He's got a little past history of kind of bending the rules a bit, if you want to call it that, bending the rules, or just cheating. So that kind of led to it. And then he just kind of, he needed to proceed much differently than he did, you know. Mm-hmm. But he basically tried to get information that said, yeah, the ball bounced. That didn't bounce, it flew in there. So he just kind of assumed that the ball was going to be plugged. As it finds out later, the ball did bounce. Typically, a ball doesn't plug after it bounces. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of proceeded like, yep, it's plugged. And he needed to wait for the rules official, not kind of make that determination on his own to open up that can of worms. And then you got somebody questioning him, and he's not going to back down. That's not him at all. Mm-hmm. And then it just started blowing up. And then with his history, it's like it turned into what it did.
So you've been in the clubhouse, you've been in the heat of it, and that's kind of the scarlet letter that nobody can they can't sand that tattoo off if you've been questioned integrity-wise, correct? At that level of golf?
No question. I mean, you're always going to be stuck with that tag, you know. And for him, it's not just one time, man. This is the third or fourth incident that he's been involved in, right or wrong. So he just that tag keeps building, you know. And he's not a very likable guy. I mean, he'll stick to his gun. He can be pretty brash at times, and he'll let you know what he feels.
Mike Schuart's with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf, Hail Varsity Radio. Shuey, as we look at the Waste Management Open, take me through that event. I know my dad and some of his buddies would go to that down in Scottsdale, and it's popular for a lot of Nebraskans to scoot away in this lovely month of February after signing day, right?
Exactly.
It's one of the more popular events for folks to go kind of kick it and get up close and personal, isn't it?
It's an incredible event. It's just a huge party. I mean, they have, on a normal year, man, they have thousands of people out there. They have what's called the Crow's Nest, which is a big old tent they used to have out there on property, but they had to move off property because it got so crazy. So, I mean, and the weather's good. People love it down there. They go down and play a little golf, go watch some good golf, and enjoy themselves. And it's right before the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So, it just has a whole combination of good things going for it.
Shuey, what's going on with you? Talk to me about Wilderness Ridge. I know folks have a chance to become members out there, and you got such a construction setup. Not only are you, doing the snowman thing, building snowmans, not making snowmans, but you're also get your construction hat on right now, don't you?
You bet, man. I just walked in the door after doing a fitting, sold a young man here a new Titleist driver.
Bang.
He's got a nice smile on his face. He's getting ready for the high school season, so getting people hooked up.
Well, and tell me about fitting, because you're going to say this is what you need, and if you listen to me, and you're kind, but if you listen to Shuey, you're gonna use that driver to its fullest ability.
That's exactly right. That's our plan. That's what we just found out. We took him through a fitting. We hit a bunch of different clubs, and we got him dialed into the one that actually works the best.
It's a way to do it.
If it works the best, man, you're going to perform the best.
Well, I love it. And you've got some indoor options too, right, to work on your game?
You got it. Yep. So we got a huge putting and chipping area. So there's not much we cannot do. So It's fun, even when there's 14 inches of snow out there.
Well, it's thawing a bit, and then you can get back into Casa de Shuey's and and work on your game even in wintertime. Shuey, let's talk Super Bowl. Got about 3 minutes here. What are you doing for the game, and who do you like on Sunday?
Actually, I'll be just finishing up a junior camp. Get home, and I'll watch the game after our junior camp, so it'll be a good day. Man, I think it's going to be a really high-scoring, close game. I like Kansas City, though. I like their offense. It's incredible.
No problem. Thank you. Enjoy it.
I love that. And I think it's going to be high-scoring. I think first team to 30. I think you're going to have a – you tell me this. How you feeling about Sue having another one of his flashpoint moments like he did against Texas, like he did against New Orleans in the NFC title game a couple years back? Does Sue go off on Sunday, or is he just more kind of a role guy now at that age?
Oh, I think he's a little more of a role guy. But again, you're playing the Super Bowl, so man, you can't get kind of jacked up for this. And the guy's so talented, it's like I could see him having an incredible game. Mm-hmm. Lavante's the one that's going to have an incredible game. That guy's
awesome.
He is amazing. He is just a football player and just knows how to make plays. Period.
Mike, before we go, I want to bring this back full circle and bring it back to golf. So I want you to take the two quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, and I want you to compare each of them to a golfer on the professional tour. Which one is each?
Oh, wow. Tom Brady would probably be closer to Tiger Woods, and Mahomes would be closer to Phil Mickelson.
Really? Okay. All right.
Tom Brady's pretty consistent, just kind of goes about his business, and Mahomes has got a lot more flash, makes incredible plays, does incredible things. So that's how I'd look at both of those.
Shuey, if folks want to figure out how to see you when things thaw out or before and talk membership, how do they do that?
Yeah, just give a call out here at Wilderness Ridge, and we'll send them in the right direction to get all the information they need, from membership information, from lessons, club fitting. So we'll take care of anything they have a question on.
When's the swim-up bar going to be done?
No, that's hopefully by the end of the summer.
Okay.
Asking the important questions.
Well, I am. I mean,
that is the most important.
After I no doubt hone my game on the back nine, I will need to refresh.
Exactly. Swim up and have a cocktail.
Maybe a vodka lemonade.
And a beer. We're going to do both of them. Shuey, you be good. You have a great weekend. Thanks for your time, man.
You bet. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right.
Stay safe.
You too. Mike Schuart with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. I'm going to get me a Johnny Football Swan, paddle around in the pool, and get me a vodka lemonade. Greg Smith's coming up, Recruiting Insider. Thoughts on the 21 class next hour with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Greg Smith, 10 minutes away, will recap some of the walk-ons, his thoughts on the class, takeaway with Avante Dickerson headed to Oregon. Greg Smith from Hail Varsity, Recruiting Insider. Lars Anderson, his time with Bruce Arians, and what to look forward to on Sunday. The recruiting classes ranked. Ohio State, shocker, comes in at number 2 nationally, number 1 overall in the Big Ten. Michigan, another top 10 ranking. Wisconsin comes in at 15. Maryland, Loxley, one of them Saban recruiters. Maryland comes in at number 18 to finish top 4. And they were pretty explosive offensively before they got COVID and everything last year. They had a little Tua transfer out and throwing the football around. Nebraska comes in at number 5, 20th composite ranking. Penn State in at 6, 21. Iowa 7, 23. Minnesota 8 at 36. Rutgers, there's a heartbeat in Jersey, man. Schiano, that's the first time they've had a top 40 recruiting class in years. Sparty in at 43. Northwestern 50. Northwestern's always at like between 50 and 60. And it doesn't matter. They still win 9 games, you feel like.
Just imagine what Fitzgerald could do with like a top 15 recruiting class.
Well, imagine what Fitzgerald would do if he didn't have to like have the hardest school in the freaking United States to get into. One of them. You got Indiana, 54, but you kind of want the smart kids too. Indiana, I said they were 61. That was my mistake.
Hey, you could have made it Northwestern.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Purdue's in at 72, Illinois at 74.
So Illinois is bottom? Who's bottom?
Illinois.
Well, that doesn't shock me with the coaching change.
But they were always kind of not great anyway. But Lovey had decent talent there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one team like Nebraska has not lost to in the last 5 years, and that's Rutgers.
Now they're top 50.
Recruiting-wise,
Yeah.
and they got a proven coach who's won there before.
I got to say, I think it's pretty cool to see Maryland up that high, even though this is like a Husker show. Like, Maryland's one of those schools, like, in my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen Maryland have any real success.
They were good. They were good when they had Durkin there.
What year was that?
I don't know. They almost beat Ohio State. Maryland's not far removed from like 8-5.
Well, 8-5's like they never been like the 10-2 Big Ten team.
No.
Will they ever get there? I don't know, but I'd like to see them try.
It was 20 years ago, and they had Fat Ralph, their head coach, Friedgen, and they had Franklin as their offensive coordinator.
Like, how cool would it just be to have another team in the East to challenge Ohio State?
Well, you have 2. You have Penn State and Michigan. But a third would be okay. And for a while, the only team in the East that beat Ohio State, Sparty's got 2 wins over them, and you have the punt block one from Penn State. Penn State's been right there. I wonder if they're about ready not to drop off, but to kind of settle as a 10-3 team versus an 11-1 squad. I wonder if they're, and I don't mean this like they're written off. I wonder if they're about ready to take a step back because his name was out there for the Tennessee job. He may want to get the hell out of Penn State.
But then you also look at it, and it's so tough to be a school like Penn State whenever you got a giant like Ohio State in the same division as you, because especially whenever you're hitting the same recruiting grounds, really, up there in the...
You've won a lot of those. I mean, you just have. I mean, when Nebraska was in the mix recruiting-wise, stop me if you've heard this before, but another outside linebacker chooses Penn State. Didn't go Nebraska's way. We'll get into it next. Greg Smith with us on Hail Varsity. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Thanks for spending time at Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Quiet day for the Big Red, but they're going full force for 2022 on the final signing day of the 2021 class. Greg Smith is all over recruiting. Check out his YouTube conversation with Aaron Sorensen as he spent some time on the Avante Dickerson decision. And follow Greg on Twitter at GregSmithHV. We welcome in Greg Smith. Greg, it is a day that's gotten a little bit quieter for Nebraska football the last 2 seasons. What does today say to you, as a guy who's covered recruiting for a number of years? Are you focused on, wow, Nebraska finished with a top 20 class during a pandemic, or are you kind of more focused on, man, they let a guy like Avante Dickerson get away?
Oh, in that case, I'm more focused on Nebraska being able to put together a top 20, 25 class in a pandemic without their biggest weapon on the recruiting trail. And I'm not sure, even as I say that out loud there, that I've probably given them enough credit for being able to put that together, given how important visits are to what they do overall. And any coach that you ask over there, recruiting staffer, will tell you that that's their number one selling point. So it's a pretty big deal that they were able to do that. It was tough to see Avante Dickerson pick Oregon over Nebraska, but you would also much rather have him go to the Pac-12 than have to face him in the Big Ten like they are going to have to do Keegan Johnson at Iowa.
So tell me this, why is Nebraska so good during a pandemic? Why has Nebraska been so good at getting the talent here the first 4 years of the Frost era?
Yeah, they are really good at a couple of things that are really key to recruiting here. They are good at identifying good players early. Really, one of the best examples of that from the 2021 class is actually Thomas Fedoni, who had been coming to campus and had been being recruited by Nebraska for a couple of years, like well before he blew up and became a huge national name where every program in the country wanted him. And that ended up really helping out Nebraska in the long run. The other thing that Nebraska is very good at doing is just building relationships in general. Like when you talk to recruits about why they pick Nebraska, it comes up a lot that Nebraska is very good at building relationships in a variety of ways because of the way that they recruit, where you kind of have an area recruiter versus just your position coach being the one to reach out to you. The benefit of that is you get to know multiple coaches on the staff, and Nebraska gets after it pretty hard on the recruiting trail. So that ends up really helping them, and they do a good job of selling the vision of where they want this thing to go with prospective recruits.
Greg Smith's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Greg, without these visits, do you expect that Nebraska's MO for recruiting might be different? Then I don't want to say that they're not going to utilize the visits anymore, but now that they've gotten this experience down and they've seen that they can get a top 20 recruiting class with different methods, do you see the recruiting even getting better as the years go on?
Well, yes and no. I think the thing that will help Nebraska's recruiting get better is continuing to win, or to win more. I think that that's the next big step. But I do think that some of these things, from what's been happening over the last year now, because it's been over a year that we've actually been in the dead period, because they put the thing in March, but it actually went in February because it goes in right after the last signing day. But I think that some of like the Zoom stuff and virtual tours, I think can, stick around and stand the test of time. But you'll always want to be able to get guys on campus, especially with Nebraska, because it's always so different from what kids think it's going to be. It's almost always better than what they think.
Greg Smith is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, recruiting insider, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Greg, give me your take, as you've been in close connection with Avante Dickerson and the West Side folks. What ultimately won out for him with Oregon? And then the other kid that Nebraska was in it till the end with was Davon Townley. And, before we went to break at the top of the hour, I said, stop me if you've heard this before. An outside linebacker down between Nebraska and Penn State chooses Penn State, right? And so give me your reaction to both those guys and, where Nebraska may turn with those two scholarships they've got in their back pocket.
Yeah, I think Avante was always a guy, and you saw this when he committed to Minnesota. I think that he was always someone that kind of liked the idea of getting away for school. Like, I don't think it, and it's so tough because I've got this all day about, hey, Scott Frost said he wanted to keep top talent home, and he lost the top guy in the state. What's going on here? And I get that from a fan's point of view, but at the same time, Avante Dickerson doesn't really have bad things to say about Scott Frost or the Nebraska program that he has really good friends coming to. I really just think he wanted to get away and do something different and be his own guy somewhere else. I also happen to think that the Pac-12 style of play really suits his game. Like, I actually think he made a strong choice if he was not going to come to Nebraska, obviously for people around here, that he goes out to the Pac-12. I think that'll help for him in his development in his future. With Davon Townley, I think that Penn State was always kind of in the driver's seat in that situation. I think that continuing to battle other Big Ten teams for linebackers, I think, is something that you definitely want to see. As you've seen Penn State pop up here in recent years, you've seen Nebraska battle Wisconsin, you've seen them battle Iowa. I think that that's a good sign that they're recruiting the right linebackers. You just got to start winning more of those battles. And as far as the last two spots go, they're definitely going to go portaling. I think that you're going to look to see what happens in the transfer portal, as you'll continue to see,
record number of people going into that thing. But as we saw with what happened with Luke McCaffrey leaving, Nebraska is probably pretty fortunate that they have a couple of spots in their back pocket now, because now the options are kind of wide open as where they can go with that.
Greg, you bring up a good point going to the transfer portal, because I wanted to ask you about the places that the Husker staff may have missed on in this class. Were there any positions where they wanted a guy or they wanted an upgraded position they didn't get him that they may look to in the transfer portal?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because outside linebacker is the one that comes to mind with just kind of an edge rusher. But the thing is they had that guy, right? Patrick Payton was that guy, and ended up decommitting and committing to Florida State. Will Schweitzer was a guy that was in the class for a minute, and he ends up leaving as well. Christian Burkhalter was another guy from down in Alabama, I believe, that Nebraska was in on heavy. So that was really where they missed, even though with that, I like the linebackers that they got. But if Nebraska can get an impact kind of pass rusher type, they'll definitely always look at that. They're probably going to have to kind of kick the tires on quarterback, at least to get some more experience in the room. Not that I think they necessarily missed on quarterback in this class. I like Harburg and his long-term projection. But now I think that they're able to go through winter and spring and see what kind of transpires with the team, and then kind of address the needs with the two spots remaining from there, which is a better position to be in for Nebraska.
Greg Smith's with us at Greg Smith HV on Twitter. Greg, we'll get to the slew of 2022 names that you've been kind of turning the page to and focusing on. Give me three guys that are on Greg's guys' radar here. Give me three guys from this class. We're going to take Fedoni out of the equation because he is a guy that we all kind of say, okay, that's the dude in the class. But give me three folks that you're intrigued by and excited about for Nebraska fans.
Yeah, I think there's another one in Omaha that we talked about, Avante Dickerson. To begin with, I'll stay at Omaha West Side and go with Kobe Bretz. I'm sure you got a chance to see him play this year. He's a really great athlete. I don't know if you can watch them and not come away impressed with his athleticism. I am really intrigued to see what happens with him, if he can stay at safety and kind of be a rangy athletic safety, or if he adds weight and comes down to outside linebacker, plays a little bit of a hybrid role. I think his potential is really, really high. On the offensive line, going out to Iowa, I like Henry Latowski on the offensive line. I think that as a guard, he has the makings of being a really good guard in this style of offensive line that has really good athleticism and got some nasty to him. And then at wide receiver, I'll go there. I like Latrell Neville. It is really hard to separate those three wide receivers because they're similar in size, but they have different skill sets. So it wouldn't surprise me if any of them end up kind of breaking out, but I'll pick Neville from down in Texas. I think he's got a great work ethic and athleticism. I think he can bring a lot to the offense at 6'3".
Randolph, Kapai, Sioux Falls, guy's a beast, had a lot of offers. Nebraska gets him. When we look at the Iowa, the Nebraska, and then South Dakota, that makes up more than 50% of your 20 signees, so that's the 500-mile radius that's so huge. Yep. But, what's the ceiling for our dear friend Randy?
Okay, man, I'm sad that I forgot him. So
you're good. He's a guy that I'm like, man, I love. I'm trying to say, okay, what's his weight going to be, and can he go kill people off the edge?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that he's another kid kind of like Brett's, except for he's going to start at linebacker, but he's like Brett's in that he's got a lot of versatility to his game, and it's actually something a lot of the linebackers in this class share. But I think that Kapai could end up being a guy that plays inside or outside. I hope that he gets the shot to start off outside to see what he can do. I do not know for sure, but I do think that he could be a guy that can come off of the edge for you. He's a super talent as well, so I'm excited about him. And I do think that he's probably like the highest rated kid in the class that people probably don't talk about enough.
Yeah, Greg, I was just going to say that. I mean, for being a guy who's a top 250 player in the country, you don't hear all that much about Kapai. He's been committed for a while. Are there any other guys in the class that you think could be sleepers in this class, kind of like Kapai?
Man, Jalen Weaver, big defensive lineman out in California. When you go 6'6", 6'7", almost 300 pounds coming out of high school, but also is really athletic because he has a basketball background, that's a good lump of clay for, Zach Duvall to work with, along with Tony Tuioti on that defensive line, get him coached up. That's a guy that I'm really intrigued by to see where he's at in a couple of years, because I think he could be a really intriguing player.
Greg, let's talk walk-ons, some walk-ons you're excited about, and let's spend some time first, though, before the walk-ons on Ernest Houseman. I saw him play for Columbus. I'm like, who is that dude? And, now he's got a senior season in front of him, and he's got a slew of Power 5 offers along with some G5 offers, but the who's coming after Ernest, or E, Mr. E, as he's probably called in Columbus. That kid's really nice. Is Nebraska in pretty good position with him among some other high-level kids within the state, yet again, that are getting big-time Division I offers? I mean, the Metro's pretty loaded. You got Apple getting company out of Southeast. And, there's so many in-state kids that, it's just down the road for Nebraska.
Yeah, first of all, count me in on the Jake Applegate bandwagon.
Yep.
I hope that kid gets an offer down the road, and I think that he could be an offer guy as a linebacker. But Ernest Houseman, Nebraska has to be counting their lucky stars that they got in early on him, and they did, and they have a solid relationship. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's really excited about where his relationship is going with Nebraska, but he's also been excited about all of the attention that's been coming his way. And I think today he picked up Michigan. Yeah. He just picked up Boston College. There were a few others that have happened here. In Minnesota, I think, offered him yesterday. He's getting offers just more and more by the day, and he's a really good player. And I think that we talk about kind of that big group of, I think it's 4 guys out in the Metro that already have offers from Nebraska. But don't forget about the kid in Columbus, because he's a really talented player that Nebraska's done a good job with so far, but they're going to have to keep on that one.
Walk-ons. Give me a couple, 3 walk-ons you think could see time or get that scholarship at some point. Really nice-looking walk-on class again for Frost.
Yeah, Alex Bullock, Creighton Prep, is one of the top names that you think of. Play wide out, could even play some defensive back. Derek Branch from that Lincoln Southeast team is another wide out that I like. And then I just forgot, and I apologize, the kicker's name, who actually could kick the ball out of the end zone. I was just looking at this.
What did you just say?
Yeah, that's and that was, I wanted to make sure to mention him, and I very much apologize. I just forgot his name, but that people will know about that hopefully coming up if he can reliably do that in Lincoln.
If he does that, like
Greg
right off the
Smith's
bat,
wish list is to get a kicker that kicks the ball out of the end zone.
If he does that right away, does he get like the starting kickoff spot right away, you think, if he can just do that? 'Cause is there anyone else in the roster that can do that?
Yeah, that's another thing. That has to be a wide open spot, right? Like, you would think that if you can, like, can that be a heck of a way to kind of come in and be able to contribute right away, because they have not had anyone that can do that. And they did some different things last year where they were trying some directional kicks, and sometimes that worked really well. Other times it definitely didn't. So we'll see. I think the easiest path there is for you just to find someone that can kick it out of the end zone. So hopefully they have that.
He's a kid out of Ord, isn't he?
Yes, but I'm blanking on the name still.
I'm going to pull that up. I'm going to pull that up here in 2 seconds, hailvarsity.com. Oh, the wireless in here is beautiful. I know who you're talking about, though. The kid out of Ord can ball, and get me those Nebraskans with the thunder in their toe, right?
Right, it always seems like, it feels like for a little bit here they kind of went away from that, or it just wasn't happening. But you can always find those guys around the state, right? Like, it feels like we're talking about kind of like the Power 5 level skill talent that's been around coming up for the last couple of years. But I think those kickers, we're finding out what kind of blessing it was to have those guys lying around all the time, too.
Now, Greg, give me a prediction for the Super Bowl. We're in it. You know, we're counting down the days. What happens Sunday? Who are you cheering for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm cheering for a good game just because I don't have allegiances to either team. My Bears are so far off, I can't even see this thing. But I think that Kansas City wins it. I just can't see anyone like consistently stopping them enough to be able to win that game, even though that Tampa defense is money. It's hard to go against the legend and Tom Brady, but I think Patrick Mahomes gets it done for the Chiefs.
Greg Smith, Greg, thanks for the time today.
Hey, thanks as always. You guys have a great day.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
And
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. We bring in college football insider and man for Sports Illustrated for a number of years, several New York Times best-selling books. We say hi to Lars Anderson, native Nebraskan at Lars Anderson 71, co-host of the Jay Barker Show. Lars, it's Super Bowl week, and you talked to Joe Willie Namath today, brother, on your show. Was he wearing the fur coat?
well, he's enjoying his time down in Florida. He's friends with Bruce Arians, and, they have the Alabama connection. Bruce is on Bear Bryant's final staff, then coached again at Alabama in the mid-'90s for Mike DuBose. And over the years, he's gotten to know Joe Namath quite well, and Joe just thinks the world of Bruce, and he expressed that he wished that he could have played for Bruce just because of the way that Bruce lets his quarterbacks just let it rip, and Bruce's philosophy of no risk it, no biscuit, and I think that's a big reason why Tom Brady wanted to come to Tampa. It wasn't necessarily because of the roster or the wide receivers or the defense or the offensive line. It was because of Bruce Arians.
Lars Anderson with us. And Lars, one of your best-selling books is that biography with Bruce Arians. Tell my listeners the story about your connection with BA and that process, because it's a phenomenal read, and this is something BA's been chasing his whole life, this stage, this Super Bowl moment.
Yeah, so this was several years ago that Bruce's agent reached out to my literary agent, and that led to me doing a story on Bruce for Bleacher Report. Mm-hmm. And really what we wanted to do for this piece was just to see if we got along and if a long-form collaboration between the two of us could work. And so I went out to Phoenix. He was the head coach of the Cardinals at the time. And really Bruce's motivation to write the Quarterback Whisperer was for him to transition from coaching into broadcasting, because he knew at the time that he was just going to coach for 2 more years with the Cardinals, and then he wanted to get into broadcasting, and he kind of wanted to stay relevant. And so he wanted to write a book, and Bruce has so many connections to Alabama and Birmingham. I'm not sure who recommended my name to him, but anyway, I ended up going out to Phoenix during training camp, and Bruce and I spent the better part of a week together, and it was really interesting, Chris. Like at the end of every day, Bruce and his coaching staff, those who were brave enough, would retreat to his suite in the hotel, which was located just across the street from Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. And Bruce, he was a former bartender at when he was at Virginia Tech. He was a wishbone quarterback, believe it or not, at Virginia Tech. And on Saturday afternoons in the fall, he would be on the football field, and then Saturday nights he would be behind a bar slinging drinks. And so Bruce would then, when we're in Glendale in his suite, he would start slinging drinks, and Bruce loves Crown. And if you want to get a good laugh, follow Frank Caliendo on Twitter. He does a spot-on interpretation of Bruce, and he just did this like little spoof where he as Bruce is hoisting the NFC Championship trophy, but instead of the trophy, it's this big bottle of Crown. And so Bruce, he likes his Crown, and he likes it when people around him are drinking Crown. And so it would be me and Time, who's the general manager and still the general manager of the Cardinals, and Tom Moore, who's been an assistant coach forever and one of Bruce's writing men forever. And boy, we would just and then Bruce's agent, we would stay up till about 2 in the morning talking. And the stories, of course, just kept flowing and flowing and flowing. And I was just writing all this stuff down, having the time of my life. But then, Bruce would be like, so, Lars, you're going to be at the quarterbacks meeting at 6 a.m., right? And I'll be like, yeah, Bruce, I'll be there. And, after like 2 or 3 days of this, I was dying. I was dying, Chris. And it was like Bruce had this boundless energy, and so did Kime. And it got to the point where I would see them at like 3 in the afternoon, and I would just be dragging. I'll be dragging, and they'd be like, "Are you man enough to come up to the suite tonight, Lars? Are you man enough?" and I had to be, because I kind of knew, like, it wasn't just like a test of whether or not I had the endurance to keep up. It was like, am I a guy that Bruce wants to work with?
Sure.
And so anyway, long story short, we ended up just getting along so well, and then we wrote the book together, and then Bruce spent just 1 year out of coaching because he was having some health issues, and those health issues got better. And then Bruce also realized, so he was living in Reynolds Plantation, Georgia. He still does. He and his wife Chris call it their forever home. And so he was working for Fox. And Fox would literally, they would helicopter Bruce from Reynolds Plantation over to the Atlanta airport. But then Bruce had to do something that he had never had to do before, and that was deal with TSA. And he realized quickly he didn't like dealing with TSA. And it didn't matter if he was flying first class. He was just a regular grunt like the rest of us. And he was like, he enjoyed doing the broadcast, and I forget who his partners were, but he did a good job with it. And then this opportunity with the Buccaneers came off, and so the first year, Jameis Winston, he throws for over 5,000 yards. He also throws 30 interceptions, and Bruce made the difficult decision to part ways with Jameis. And then little birdie told him that Tom Brady could be interested in leaving the Patriots, and kind of had a wandering eye. And so at the NFL Combine that year, I think Bruce, I swear to God he did this, he had a reporter friend ask him, hey, if you had your ideal situation, what quarterback would you want? So he had that question planted, okay? And then so he gushes on and on about Tom Brady. All right? And this is all by design. This is not happenstance. And then Brady hears this. Brady does his research. I don't know if he read The Quarterback Whisperer or not, or, I know he watched the NFL Network documentary of Football Life on BA. And then he did his research, and then all of a sudden Brady calls BA and Lick, right, who's got a Nebraska connection.
And Lights, our proud Fremont boy, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of Nebraska connections on this Tampa team, as you know. And Tom ended up selling himself to them, saying, look, I want to come join you guys. What can you offer me? And Bruce said, look, you can have a hand in personnel decisions. You can almost be like a player coach. and we'll listen to you on how you want to sort of manipulate the playbook, and we'll change everything. We'll change our entire offense so that you're comfortable, but at the same time, you have to listen to me, and Bruce saying this, and, his philosophy is summed up in no risk it, no biscuit. He's like, I want you to throw the rock down the field, and we are going to be ultra aggressive all the time. And that just resonated with Tom. Tom has a child, and this is not talked about a lot, but he has a child out of wedlock who lives in New York City. It said that you can get a direct flight from Tampa to New York and be there relatively quickly, and so that worked in their favor. And the one thing that has annoyed Bruce throughout the year about Tom, and Bruce has told me this the other day when we were talking, was that Bruce will say something to a young player, and Bruce will just get like this blank stare and no verbal response from the player. And then Tom will hear Bruce say this on the practice field, and Tom will say the exact same thing, and the player will look at Tom and say, yes, sir, Tom, yes, sir. So, again, in a lot of ways, Brady is almost assistant head coach.
Lars Anderson with us, author of The Quarterback Whisperer with Bruce Arians, BA in Tampa, vying for a title. That's a phenomenal backstory to how Tom got to Tampa. Lars, got a couple minutes. I need a prediction, and I need a thought on Sunday. What are you thinking?
I think it's going to be a really close game. I think the injury to Eric Fisher, who I feel horrible about it. The left tackle for the Chiefs, ruptured his Achilles, and I've unfortunately had that same injury. It's a tough one to come back from, but losing that left tackle is going to be huge because you saw what Jason Pierre-Paul and what Shaq Barrett, the two defensive ends for Tampa Bay, were able to do against a healthy Green Bay offensive line. The two of them combined for 5 sacks in the NFC Championship game and consistently pressured Aaron Rodgers. And what Tampa was able to do was to get pressure on Rodgers with 4 people. I think Ndamukong Suh, again, another Nebraska connection, I think Suh's going to have a really big game. And I think the story of the game is going to be the Tampa Bay defensive front 4 against Kansas City's offensive line. They're not going to let Tyreek Hill go for 203 yards receiving in the first quarter like they did in the first time that they played. They're going to put a safety over the top, and they're going to double Tyreek Hill. They're going to double Travis Kelce, and they're going to make other guys try to beat him. And so I think, I'm biased. I'm biased. But I like Tampa to win this game 31-28 on a late field goal.
Lars Anderson, I think we're on the same page with how Tampa can do it. You can find Lars on Twitter at LarsAnderson71. And, of course, the biographer with Bruce Arians, the quarterback whisperer. Lars, be thinking about you on Sunday, brother. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, brother.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. Dr. Brandon, how you been?
I'm great, Chris. How you been?
Doing all right, man. Gearing up for Sunday with Tampa and Kansas City. The Chiefs are a true pleasure to watch. Tampa with all that Nebraska influence and, of course, Mr. Brady. You've got to be excited. You have big plans for Sunday?
No big plans, but just what a great Super Bowl, and it's just amazing to see Tampa Bay get there and think about what a turnaround it's been with Brady there, and That's pretty amazing. Yeah, kind of a neat run. Obviously, it's great to have the Chiefs there too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of somewhat local team. That's going to be fun.
It will be, and the part of this thing that'll be interesting is that Kansas City offensive line, as dinged up as they are against that Tampa defense that's really come to play. And going to spend some time on Eric Fisher. It's an older injury, but it's going to be potentially impactful, specifically with Tampa and what they've been able to do off the edge with Pierre Paul and Shaq Barrett, a Boys Town kid. So let's talk Eric Fisher. And he's played a really valiant career in Kansas City, part of a key cog in that offense. But when we talk about playing tackle and coming back from an Achilles injury, I know athletes are able to return. We've done a lot of Achilles jock docs, but I don't think we've done one with an offensive tackle before. So talk to me a little bit here about Fisher and not only his injury, but just his age, the injury, and the position he plays.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. I don't think we have probably touched on an offensive lineman before with an Achilles injury. I mean, obviously that they're out there, but probably less so. But let's definitely different in terms of his position. Let's do kind of get in a little bit to what's he look like long term, what's the recovery look like. So obviously, just kind of rewinding back here anatomically, like we typically do. So speaking anatomically, where the Achilles is, most people know where the Achilles is. It's basically that tendon that comes down off the end of your calf, hooks down on the bottom part of your heel, or the calcaneus. That's the Achilles tendon. Where these injuries typically occur, about an inch or two above where that Achilles hooks onto the heel bone. But essentially, you have the tear in the Achilles, and then from there, traditionally this is something that's been fixed surgically, and then you're looking at a good long 8, 9, 10 months recovery to get back, sometimes upwards of a year. I will tell you, just from a treatment perspective, it's been interesting watching this shift over the past couple of years. There's been kind of a trend for it, even in the last maybe like 10 years, but over the last couple of years, really a bigger change just in terms of how do you treat these. Do you actually treat it with surgery, or do you treat it non-operatively? There's been a bunch of new studies out that have actually shown that non-operative treatment is actually equivalent to operative treatment with these, which sounds totally crazy compared to what we used to think about these. These are always a fix for us in the past. When you look at those studies, though, they're kind of all comers. Those studies are not specific. Here's an NFL player. Do you always fix NFL players? Or here's an NBA player. Do you always fix them? Same thing with baseball. So there's not those specific studies, but it'd be interesting to see how those kind of athletes would fit into that protocol just in terms of surgery, not surgery. I would assume for him they're probably going to go the surgery route. That's the traditional thing to do. It's hard at that super high sports level to have a big shift like that occur over a short amount of time. So I'm assuming he's probably going to have the surgery side, which again, there's some newer techniques with different suture and repair stuff going on that they'll use, and different kind of magic biologics you can add to it to aid in healing. So that's kind of that side of it. So at any rate, they'll do the surgery part, rehab it, 6-12 months in terms of recovery. But the big question is, how does he look long term, was your question. As an offensive lineman, probably not as detrimental to him as, say, somebody like a running back, quarterback, receiver, where there's more agility type things, explosive jumping, cutting activities. And so, he probably is not as impacted with this as, say, one of those other players would be. And so maybe for him, the long-term outlook is better than, say, a quarterback or, the basketball player. And so that would probably be my thought process on him. Obviously, his mobility will be a little bit limited for a while. The question will be with this injury is, even with the surgery part, is how much of that calf or those muscular structures in that area, the gastroc, so it's how much of that can he build back, because that obviously plays a big role in his power of standing his ground and blocking. So that'll be the big question for him and the big focus of his rehab post-op.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, a Jock Doc Wednesday, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, focusing on the Chiefs here and Eric Fisher, his Achilles injury. You have Remmers, it's going to be in at right tackle for Schwartz, Wiley in at left tackle as we talk midweek here, and Wisniewski at guard. So 3 of the 5 are guys who've seen time this year due to the injury issues with the Kansas City offensive line. But Fisher, number 1 pick overall in the 13 draft out of Central Michigan, really kind of finding his own as he's gotten into his later 20s and into his 30s. 2 of the last 3 seasons, he was a Pro Bowl tackle in the NFL. So as we talk about that position, you need obviously the quickness with those guys speeding in at 280 pounds off the edge that are just crazily strong, right? In the ability on 3rd and 8 to keep Mahomes safe with his mobility also factored in. So when I talk about the part of Fisher here with the Achilles, does this affect his balance, or is it just the agility side? If we're going to look at the percentages here, because I'm wondering about that, because you know how balanced the Chiefs are offensively when they run and pass, right? So how's his balance gonna deal with this Achilles? Not just the power and strength, obviously you hit on that, but his balance and his lateral ability.
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely that will be impacted to an extent. One of the terms that we use for this as somebody goes through surgery and the rehab process, there's a term called neuromuscular retraining, which is essentially how your brain kind of relearns as to where's this knee at in space, where's your ankle at in space, how does that knee or ankle feel when it makes contact with the ground or with certain cuts. And so that neuromuscular retraining takes a long time. Obviously, balance plays into that. And so, that first year when he gets back, it'll be tough. His balance will be off for a while. A lot of that feedback will take time to get that back. Balance also has to do with just the flexibility piece. That's one of the biggest battles after, an Achilles injury is regaining that flexibility through the ankle joint is tough. These tend to be pretty tight afterwards. You have to get that tension just right when you do fix these. And so regaining that will be an issue. So, yeah, I think so. I think he'll struggle with that balance for a while. Long-term prospects of that, I think balance-wise, you do gain that back pretty well, especially, again, for that position he'll be in. So I think in the end it will be okay from that perspective. But, again, that first year's tough. That first year back after an Achilles is tough. You can play, but you're really not the same that first year you're back. And so I think next year will be a bit of a struggle for him. That might cause some issues for them just in terms of his protection of the quarterback and their running game.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. We're talking Chiefs and Bucks and that walking wounded crew for the Chiefs on the offensive line and the Achilles issue with Eric Fisher, as it's just gut-wrenching to him. He won one last year as a starter, wanted 2, and we'll see what happens with Kansas City. Dr. Brandon, enjoy your Sunday with family and friends. Enjoy the game. We'll do this again soon.
Sounds great, Chris. You guys take care. Thanks again.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, thanks to Mike Schuart and Mike Babcock, Lars Anderson, author with Bruce Arians, the quarterback whisperer, and Greg Smith knocking out signing day 2.0 today, and quiet for Nebraska, but a good class moving forward. Some official mentions for the walk-ons, a lot of great in-state kids that will help the Nebraska football program. Tomorrow on the show, we'll check in with Brandon Vogel and Danny Burke and Gary Barnett, and Grant Wistrom will join us. We'll round out Super Bowl week with Eric Warfield and Coach Ron Brown. So excited to have that locked in the rest of the week here on Hail Varsity Radio. Podcast, get us subscribed to, give us a review, and give us some feedback. iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, where you can get the podcast, the on-demand ESPNLincoln.com for the interviews you want to hear, and check out the full array of options when it comes to the Hurrdat Media selection of podcasts. If you're moving, West Blue Realty's where you got to go, where you got to turn. In 2021, they specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and surrounding communities. They'll help make this next move a smooth one for you. And when you mention Hail Varsity, for a limited time, up to $1,000 off the closing of your next home purchase. 2 names you got to know when it comes to moving: Tom Luby, Kelly Hofschneider. Give Tom a call at 402-540-3768, or you can call Kelly Hofschneider, West Blue Realty, westbluerealty.com, 402-202-2312. 1120 K Street, Suite 200. In Lincoln is where you can find them. And I got ditched for dinner tonight, so I got to figure out if I'm going to air fry something or if I'm just going to go have a beer and have a preemptive wing strike.
Well, it's Wednesday night. Is there any wing specials around in Lincoln?
I don't
tonight?
know. I was kind of checking that out. I think maybe. I know usually I'm going to have to investigate.
Like Wing Wednesday just like flows off the tongue way too well for there not to be any wing deals today.
No, I know, right? There's got to be somewhere. But there's supposed to be some sort of shortage of wings, and it's been on my mind, quite honestly, for Sunday.
Are you worried?
I am, because I will not plan ahead, and it'll be day of.
Yeah, we're guys. We don't plan ahead.
No, we pick up day of. Buckle up when you do go get your wings, is what I'm telling you. 70% of people in Nebraska are in fatal crashes. They're not wearing a seatbelt. If used properly, seatbelts can reduce risk of injury by up to 60%. Your best defense in any crash. Buckling up, brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. What are you doing for dinner? It's not an invite.
No plans at the moment.
You have leftovers?
I do have some leftover pasta. That's what I had for lunch today. So I might just go for like a little ramen.
Are you an angel hair guy?
I'm not.
That's okay. I'm not.
I mean that was my nickname back in high school. Angel hair.
Really?
No. Would have been good though, huh?
No, I'm not.
No, my nickname wasn't Angel Hair. I went for radio and got funny.
I don't want to know your nickname in high school. It's probably Stash. You started growing your stash.
Nah, that's a this year thing.
Yeah, good. All right, we will say goodbye and be back at it tomorrow. More Super Bowl thoughts, more Husker talk. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.